Today, Bitcoin starts the week in the red. BitGo reveals in a new IPO filing that revenue nearly quadrupled in the first half of the year. And Ondo Finance CEO Nathan Allman discusses the growth of the firm's newly launched tokenized securities platform. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Mackenzie Sigalos. Major cryptocurrencies in the red to kick off the week. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin dropped to the $112,000 level, and Ether and Solana's Sol token fell more than 7%. Now, the moves lower come as the growing risk of a government shutdown still looms over the market. Last week, the Senate rejected Republican and Democratic proposals to at least temporarily fund the federal government. The deadline for lawmakers to fund the government is September 30th. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. BitGo's revenue surged by nearly 4 times in the first half of 2025. That's according to this filing with the SEC from Friday for its U.S. IPO. The crypto custody firm generated $4.19 billion in revenue for the 6 months ending June 30th. That's up from a little more than $1 billion during the same period the year before. However, net income dropped to $12.6 million compared to nearly $31 million a year earlier. BitGo confidentially filed IPO documents to the SEC in July, saying that the number of offered shares and price range were yet to be determined. The move came the same month the Genius Act became law, a major boost to U.S. crypto regulation. It has also been a big year for crypto stock listings, kickstarted by stablecoin issuer Circle's blockbuster IPO in June. Since then, several other crypto firms, including the Peter Thiel-backed crypto exchange Bullish and the exchange Gemini, backed by the Winklevoss twins, also went public. Next, new FTX repayment dates have been announced. The company's bankruptcy estate said Friday that it would initiate distributions of around $1.6 billion to creditors at the end of the month. The announcement says creditors eligible for the third distribution should receive their funds from either BitGo, Kraken, or Payoneer within 1 to 3 business days from September 30th. Now, FTX's distribution plan was approved last October when a judge ruled that most creditors could receive more money than they deposited into the platform. And finally, Crypto.com is pushing back on claims that it didn't properly disclose a data breach. Its CEO, Chris Marsalek, took to X yesterday, calling suggestions that it didn't disclose a 2023 security incident unfounded. He went on to assure that the incident was contained within hours and no customer funds were at risk from it. This all follows a Friday Bloomberg report that spotlights Noah Urban, a cyber criminal from Florida who was handed a 10-year sentence last month. The report referenced his claimed involvement in compromising the account of a Crypto.com employee. All right, for our main story, I spoke with Ondo Finance CEO Nathan Allman about a tokenized securities platform launched earlier this month, which now surpassed $250 million in total value locked, or TVL. Now, according to Ondo, the new tokenized securities platform became the largest by TVL within 48 hours of launching, surpassing competitors. Allman also weighs in on the broader tokenized securities trend. So Ondo's tokenized securities platform, Ondo Global Markets, launched at the beginning of September, and you just surpassed $250 million in total value locked. Now, this product is currently not available in the US. It's focused on Asia, Pacific, Europe, and Latin America currently. But talk to me about the growth of this new tokenization offering and what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. We first got in the tokenization space a couple of years ago by launching our tokenized treasuries products, really building on the success that stablecoins have had. Our tokenized treasuries products are like stablecoins, transferable 24/7 globally, but they actually pay holders a yield. And that space has seen $7 billion in inflows over the last couple of years. As you mentioned, we've recently expanded our focus into stocks and ETFs, and our global markets platform, which makes publicly accessible, U.S. publicly traded stocks to investors all around the world, is really, the first tokenized offering outside of treasuries and stablecoins that has seen material adoption with, as you mentioned, $300 million in assets.
Now, Ondo laid out some of the top assets for customers, and the majority of the top 10 are ETFs. What do you see as the reasoning for that choice for consumers? Is there something about ETFs in this tokenized format that makes them right for this platform?
It's hard to say exactly. I mean, we're certainly running an experiment here, offering for the first time, assets outside of stablecoins and treasuries. I think that a lot of the demand is coming from crypto-rich investors that haven't yet, dipped their toes into investing in traditional assets. And so ETFs presumably are an easy way to do that. We're partnering with crypto exchanges and wallets to distribute our products, so we don't have direct line of sight into these end investors, but we're starting to do more user research, and hopefully we'll know more in the coming weeks.
Now, there has been some pushback from traditional securities exchanges who've called on global regulators to rein in the growth of tokenized securities and especially tokenized private companies. So what do you say to those efforts?
Yeah, so tokenization can be done in a lot of different ways. We've seen some tokenized securities efforts, particularly related to private stocks, where the tokens are not legally secured by any underlying assets and look a lot like equity derivatives or swaps. These can be relatively risky to end investors. Private companies often don't want there being secondary market liquidity in their assets. So I think that regulators and other market participants are right to raise some concerns around these offerings. That's not to say that they can't be done well. And even when we look at public stocks, there are models of tokenization that are potentially quite disruptive, potentially in an undesirable way to existing clearing and settlement infrastructure. So I think we support taking a crawl, walk, run cautious approach here.
What's the long-term path for Ondo Global Markets, and how do you see yourself expanding this business?
We're just in the very early innings of figuring out what the right end distribution partners and channels are. As you mentioned at the start, we're very, very globally focused right now in Asia, Latin America, Europe. I think we'll start to get more color in the coming weeks and months about how to best hone in on what the right end use cases and end customer segments are. So I think it's a little bit too early to say what that path is going to look like, but excited to be out there live and building a real user base right now.
Do you have plans to come to the US, and have you been in talk with any regulators stateside, if so?
Yeah, so we already have one product, actually our first tokenized asset, a tokenized treasuries offering that is available to US investors, now only to US accredited investors. There are some other tokenized securities from Franklin Templeton and Wisdom Tree in particular that are available to US retail investors. So it is possible today to tokenize securities for US retail investors. The challenge has been around how to distribute those tokenized securities, particularly with wallets and decentralized exchanges where there still remains some regulatory uncertainty. So we've certainly been engaged with the SEC and other market participants around how to sort that out, and expect some solutions to be in place in the coming months.
Now, you're also partnered with JP Morgan through its Connexus division for tokenized treasury trades. I talked to you about that back in May when you made the announcement. How's that partnership coming along so far?
Yeah, so we're inching closer to production rollout. There's a few other tests that we have to do before that's ready. The pilot that we last spoke about was a secondary market transaction. So it was one investor selling their tokenized treasuries to another investor in exchange for tokenized deposits from JP Morgan. We'll be testing soon some subscriptions and redemptions. So keep on the lookout for that. And then, hopefully we'll go to live production by the end of the year or early next year.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.